Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do a little bit of all things creepy. Now, whether that be reading scary stories that you guys have sent in to me, like we're doing today, or watching scary TikToks together, talking about Appalachian folklore, we do it all here, and if that sounds cool, I would love to have you. Now, if you have any stories you would like for me to share, please send them to this email address, and I will put more information on that below, along with my social media links and other fun stuff. So with all that being said, let's read some scary stories. My name's Sophie, and I came across your page last night. I felt really drawn to it after seeing your video about a mimic. I moved into my current home about 2.5 years ago. I've had multiple encounters with spirits, like one I felt in my closet when I moved in, but nothing negative. It was keeping me up at night, so I staged my room, and that seemed to help. I've constantly heard things like shushing, tapping. I've heard my name being called or conversations when no one's home. I've never thought anything of it because I know I'm just supposed to ignore it and eventually it'll stop. While looking into your page last night, it immediately gave me a huge wave of nausea, and it made me really tired. So I fell asleep without even knowing it, and I woke up around 2 a.m., but all I see is yellow and some black and white paint. I feel like I'm moving 1,000 times faster than any roller coaster I've ever been on, and I hear the loudest screaming and screeching and scratching. I'm frozen, but my head feels as if it's moving off of my head, like I'm traveling through a tunnel. I don't know what it could be, maybe sleep paralysis. I'm hoping, but it all felt so weird. I do feel as if I'm more than just a little connected to spirits, more when I was younger and even met a medium who said they felt a strong connective energy in me at 12 years old. If you have any ideas what this could be, I'd love to hear it. Honestly, that sounds a lot like a panic attack to me. That's a lot of how my panic attacks feel. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I will be in the midst of one, and that's literally how it feels. Put up protections just in case, but that's what it sounds like to me. Alright, next story. I have a few stories. My mom's house was always pretty off. We would have what sounded like sermons coming out of the computer speakers even when the computer was not on. My bed is right next to the window, which faces a tall wood privacy fence that separates our neighborhood from the forest. I looked out one night and there was an old man just standing there. He was gone in a second. He didn't run, he just disappeared. I also had an incident where I was sleeping and woke up to something crouched on my dresser. I screamed and my parents came running, but there was nothing. It went quiet after that. I was still having what I thought were hallucinations up until the main event. I have 3 sisters. My stepdad was at work and my mom was home. This happened at around 6 a.m. I get up to get ready for school and I hear running through the house, which isn't weird on a school morning. I heard our fridge open and slam shut, and I walk out to see who's awake, and I see the freezer's open, which doesn't really freak me out because if you close the fridge too hard, it'll pop the freezer open. So I close that, but I notice there's no one around. I check my mom's bathroom and I peek into her room and she's asleep. I go and check my sisters and they're all asleep. I check all the doors and they're locked. One thing about our home was that it was a trailer, a double wide that looped from the kitchen into my parents' bathroom, which then led into the bedroom, which led into the living room where the hallway that led to mine and my sister's room was. So I do the loop and there's absolutely no one. If someone was awake with that time, they absolutely would have passed me. We had an incident similar to this in our prior townhouse. I heard running on the stairs and a door slam. No one was home and I was completely by myself. I have no idea what it's attached to, but occasionally it shows when I visit still. I went to go house sit there while they were on a camping trip because they had gotten some pets since these incidents. I was in my old room hanging out and I heard my dog freaking out. It wasn't her usual bark, it was very aggressive and stern, like she was trying to get someone or something to back off. I didn't go out there yet. I waited to see if she stopped barking and then she came running to me. I checked the kitchen where she was barking and it was a mess where it hadn't been prior. The door was wide open, but the garage door was closed. You cannot exit the garage without leaving the garage door open. The garage will not close if it senses anything at all. I had heard no noise with this one other than my dog barking. The chairs were all messed up and tilted against things that weren't like that prior. I don't know what happened, but when I visit now I keep it short. This all started after my father passed, and I wonder if it's him. Some people say that loved ones come back as cardinals, and I had a cardinal that would visit my room window for years on end. I'm sorry this was on the longer side. I never really talk about this and I didn't even tell anyone who lived there. I'm very scared it'll start happening in my own home if I speak about it in my home. Okay, so that doesn't feel like... So not an unfriendly spirit. It doesn't feel like a relative visit to me. The way... Usually, if it's a loved one visiting, they don't have the sort of energy manifestations that it would take to wreck an entire room like that. That is very poltergeist activity. Now, the cardinal, on the other hand, very much was probably your dad visiting. But everything moving around like that and the dogs freaking out, I don't think so. It seems like whatever was messing with you as a child just sort of latched and followed you guys and manifested it into potentially a poltergeist or a spirit like that. I think their house definitely needs a cleansing, and I don't blame you for keeping your visit short because that is terrifying. Alright, next story. My name's Amber, and I'm obsessed with your content. I watch your videos all the time. I don't live in the States. Where I'm from, it isn't necessarily common for any strange encounters to happen, but I have many creepy stories that I would love to share. I live in a small city just outside of Calgary, Alberta. We moved here when I was around 2 years old. I've always been able to notice paranormal activity from a young age. My family moved around the city a lot, and we would move every 3 to 4 years. Our city is relatively small with a population of 80,000 people, so moving was pretty easy. Of course, I noticed activity in the majority of the older houses we lived in, but nothing was as strange as the house we currently live in. We moved in July of 2022, and the house was built in the early 70s, but has been renovated over the years, except for the lower level of the basement. It's always the basement. When we moved in, I noticed an energy in the basement. I couldn't really map out if it was negative or not at first, but almost 2 years later, I still can't really tell. At the time, my room was the bonus room in the basement. Our basement has 2 levels, and the staircase going down was directly in front of my bed. There isn't a door, so you could just see straight downstairs. That is my nightmare. That is actually my nightmare. Ugh. The first night we moved in, I went out to party, and when I got home, something felt off. Of course, I was intoxicated, so I thought maybe I was just paranoid. But when I was getting into bed, I saw a figure at the bottom of the staircase. I brushed it off and went to sleep, but for the next few months I didn't really notice anything. Around September, frequent activity started. I would hear tapping beside my head, and I would see figures at the bottom of the stairs, and sometimes I even heard faint talking. This happened for months, and I tried to cleanse the basement many times, but nothing happened. The laundry room is in the lower level of the basement, and this is where I feel it the most. I used to be terrified to go down there. The lights would flicker when I was in there for a while, and I constantly felt like I was being watched. The temperature drastically drops once you walk in, and I kid you not, it gets freezing close to the dryer. When the activity was frequent, I was smoking a lot, almost daily. I genuinely thought I was just paranoid and potentially had a case of psychosis. This January, I decided to move upstairs, and I stopped smoking. I go into the basement often because we turned my old room into a movie room. I haven't experienced any activity for the past few months until last night. I was downstairs painting, everyone went to bed, and it was late, at around 3 in the morning. I start hearing this tapping and whispering again, and then I see the figure. Since I've been sober for a few months, I knew I wasn't paranoid. I genuinely knew something was down there. It doesn't feel negative or positive, I guess it's just kind of there. I've accepted it ever since last September. This is the thing that makes me a little freaked out, though. When my parents originally viewed the house, the room in the basement belonged to a boy who was heavily into the paranormal. They told me his room was a bunch of eerie dolls and trinkets, even a Ouija board. I didn't go with them to view the house at the time. I didn't find this out until a few months ago. I'm finally putting the pieces together, and it makes sense now. I don't think anyone passed here, but I think he may have brought something into that house. Last March, my brother moved into the room that he said he never really noticed anything, but while I was helping him move in, we found some odd things that were left behind. We found a small box on a top shelf. Inside there was pictures of a man. There were push pins through the eyes and a vial with brown liquid, what looked like to be teeth inside. Both of us just thought the kid was nuts, but now I'm thinking about it. The figure is a man's figure, and the voice of the whispers is deep, a man's voice. Maybe the photograph we found is the spirit in the basement. I'll never be sure, though. Okay, if you're open to it, I would do a spirit box session in there, just to, try to see what's going on, because there is a lot of paranormal activity. You're right. If he brought in a lot of paranormal objects, something definitely could have been left behind, depending on how he kept them and if he kept up with cleansings and there was a mutual respect thing with the objects. That all really depends. But I am really curious. I would love to know what happens from a spirit box session, if that is something you're open to. Please. Alright, next story. I've seen you a lot before and love your content. Only about a few months ago I started following you. Anyways, I somewhat have a bad memory, but I'd like to share some experiences me and my family experienced that I can remember. Ever since I was little, I would stare at a corner of the room. When my stepbrother was little, he would also stare at the corner of the room, and he would cry. One time he was staring at the ceiling of a room and crying, and that was when my mom noticed the cross above him was moving on its own. She rushed both him and I and herself out of that room. I have many experiences to share, but it's an entire booklet if I shared my family's entire experiences. My family believes we are or were cursed or haunted, considering bad things would happen to us all the time. My mom even managed to see someone or something watching us in the middle of the night, describing the entity to have a bad aura. Luckily, nothing had happened recently, and I believe it's because we moved. The only thing that happened recently was a while ago. I was trying to go to sleep, but I kept being shaken awake, which concerned my brother since we share a room. I kept on trying to sleep, but whatever was there had gave me a literal heart attack and tapped on my pillow. I was terrified, so I refused to go to sleep anymore, and I eventually did pass out. It was terrifying since it could physically affect me like that. Its presence was heavy and had a bad aura. It hasn't came back, but I just wanted to share this. I hope you have a good day and keep up with your awesome self. That's terrifying. I'm glad it didn't come back, but oh my gosh. Alright, next story. I've lived in California my entire life. When I was 5, we lived in these apartments, and I would always see things walking around. I would always tell my mom, and she would just tell me I'm imagining it. When I was around 8, we moved to our home, and a couple of months later, I remember walking to the bathroom in the middle of the night and leaving the door open. I felt like I was being watched, so I looked into the kitchen, and there was a tall shadow figure that gave off the presence of a male. I remember screaming, my mom running out of her room. As she came out, it disappeared, so when I told her what I saw, she looked around and told me to stop lying, that there wasn't anyone there. That continued for a couple of years, but it would get closer. It would start across the hallway, slowly go to my bedroom door until it reached my closet. I remember every now and then I would have sleep paralysis of it getting next to me and breathing on my neck or choking me. At around 14, it has suddenly stopped, and when I turned 17, it started up again, but it was worse because it actually started to open things. It would shake doors. I would find scratch marks on me. Once I thought my dog was scratching my mom's door because she got stuck in there, which tends to happen because my mom would leave for work at 5 a.m. and would just close her door, so the room would stay cold and she liked it cold, but I remember that door was shaking like crazy. It sounded like my dog was scratching the bottom, so I went to the door and grabbed the door handle and opened it, and I was going to tell Bella, "Why are you scratching the door?" But I didn't even get to finish my sentence because she wasn't there. I froze out of shock and fear, and I just slowly closed the door and called for my dog, and that's when I saw that she came out of my room. Later that day, I told my mom what had happened, and she finally told me that she had seen the things that I had seen. But she just told me that she didn't see them so that she wouldn't scare me. She thinks it's because her family had some people that would do witchcraft, and her cousin had done a spell to end her life, but instead she thinks it just made something follow her. A couple of months later, after I moved, she told me my room had a bad presence and that none of my dogs liked my room. My oldest brother had started having things happen to him, and he thought one of the dogs was on his bed laying next to him because he felt the bed move. He felt like something was laying there, but when he turned around, there was nothing. From then on, she hasn't told me anything new that's happened, and she hasn't given an update on how they are with this stuff. Oh my gosh. It does sound like a manifestation. I don't necessarily know if it's from a spell, but it definitely is a manifestation. That's going to have to be a banishment, I fear it. Like a whole banishment ritual. That's terrifying. Alright, I think we got time to read one more story. Every year, my family goes camping for the 4th of July. It's a group of about 10 or more people, and we drive around 2 hours from home up the mountains. The last time we went camping, a few strange things happened. It happened to 3 of us, one including me. The first night we stayed, it happened to my uncle's girlfriend. Her name was Amanda. Amanda has trouble sleeping and is often up late just fixing the fire. She went away from the camp to use the bathroom, and while she was doing that, she heard someone whisper her name. Of course she freaked out and went back to the camp. She didn't tell us about this until the next morning. It happened at night. Then during the day, my Uncle Mark went out into the woods and the same thing happened to him. He wasn't really scared, but he told us about it. The day when it happened to me, my stomach had been hurting, and I went a bit away from the camp to use the bathroom. I put my jacket on a tree when I heard the noise like a twig on the ground being snapped in half. I turned to where I heard the noise come from, and it was the beginning of a trail leading further into the woods. I heard my mother's voice saying, "What are you doing?" I stopped for a moment. My mom was at the camp cooking. She wouldn't have gone over here. I didn't see anything. I picked up my stuff and walked really fast, keeping my eyes behind me the whole time. I didn't run. I didn't see anything. It scared me really badly, but I felt I shouldn't run. I walked backwards to the camp the whole time. Nothing else happened after that, and we went home a few days later. You guys did a really good job of ignoring it, and that's probably why things didn't escalate. But anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and reading some scary stories with me, and I will see you tomorrow.